Yeah, so, well, here we go. We made it. How are you
We
doing
made
there,
it.
Todd?
Doing
Yeah,
awesome.
good.
Yeah, doing awesome. It's
What's
72
what's going on this
degrees.
week with you?
I have a whole bunch of, and I've probably talked about this last couple of weeks, just kind of the calm before the storm stuff, where it's like a lot of projects that are in motion, waiting on permits, waiting on decisions, wait. That's floodgates are going to open, and then you're, pulling whatever hair out. Not me, but other people pulling their hair out, just trying to schedule all this and not get stressed out and overwhelmed. So I figure I have one more week of being calm, cool, and collected, and then maybe 2 more weeks. But as soon as June hits, it's going to go gangbusters. So yeah,
You're gonna
that's
get
where I'm
real
at.
busy, huh?
It appears that way, just from, like I said, just delays and waiting on permits and waiting on decisions and all that kind of stuff. So
Mm.
yeah. How about you?
This week's been slow week, very easy. We tackled demo last week, so that was pretty interesting. 97 house, and we just finished demo, so there was some interesting things we found. No gold, money hidden in the walls. I'm sorry, Todd. I know.
How'd you know it was
One of these days,
totally going to be my first question?
I know. One
Jeez.
of these days, there's going to be
It's going to
something
happen.
unexpected in there that's going to allow us to retire, but not today.
All right.
This week, we have the radiator guys are over there removing a couple radiators and prepping, and we are moving some pipes and stuff like that because radiators are going somewhere else or eliminating altogether. But I was really excited because radiator technicians are, in my opinion, in my experience, it's like a dying art. I cannot ever find somebody who's like really knowledgeable on boilers. And I've lately been running into a lot of houses that still have boilers, and I think it's great, but I can't find a whole lot of people that are willing and able to work on them. And the homeowners had found this company, and it's a one-man show. And so I got to meet him this week, and I was really excited because he's young. He's like at least 10 years younger than I am. And he's like really eager and interested. And I was thinking in the back of my head, well, how much experience does this guy really have? I mean, he's so young, right?
Yeah.
And boilers is kind of like an older thing. Well, come to find out, he like goes around and teaches all these
No
other
way.
HVAC companies out here how to deal with old boilers and the whole systems and all that. So I was
No
like,
kidding.
what? That's awesome. And
Yeah.
we're doing like some crazy stuff in the bathroom upstairs. We're going to put in this. I would show you a picture. I don't have it right now, but it's going to be like this little radiator because it's a bathroom. So it's going to be a little radiator about, I'm thinking this big. And then these copper tubes come out of it. And then this copper tube comes up the top, and it's going to be a towel warmer tied in that's all copper with the boiler radiator. So that's a new one that's going to go up into the bathroom there. And then we're removing another radiator in the kitchen, and we're putting in a pantry door right where not radiator, but the boiler water lines are running up and down to the second floor. So we had to move those lines out of the way. And so it was just like a lot's going on. And I was just
Sure.
really excited because we were making some changes on the fly, and he's like, yeah, sure, let's figure it out. Like, we'll have to do a little exploratory cut over here if you're cool with that. And I was like, this is demo, let's do it and get down to the nitty gritty. So the point that I'm trying to make is he's not a person who's just like, no, that's too hard, or I don't know how to do that. No, we can't do that. He's like, well, let's figure it out. Like, yeah, absolutely. I can do it. Let's just figure out how. So I'm excited. I think I got a new trade partner there. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's
awesome.
that's a true story. It's the same out here. It is hard to find HVAC companies that'll work on boilers. A lot of them just flat out will not do it. So yeah, that's a good find. Good for you.
Thanks.
Does he want to work in the Chicago area by chance?
A little bit of a drive. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Put him up on a hotel, maybe.
There you go.
Yeah. So So
Good.
that's what's going on this week. I couldn't
right.
get my friend. So here's an example of your schedule. I'm in a position right now where I could be ahead of schedule, but I can't be because I had put a whole week for the radiator guy, and he's like, I think we can get done by Wednesday. So I could potentially bring my framer in instead of on Monday, on Wednesday, or even Thursday, and he can start 2 days ahead of time, right? So I could potentially get ahead of schedule. No, see, here's the thing. I've already called and scheduled hard start dates for all of my trades all the way through October.
Yeah.
And we're just in the beginning of May right now. So if you're watching, May. So all of my trade partners throughout the whole project know their start date. Here's the thing. If I can pull the next trade partner forward a couple days, I would love to. 9 times out of 10, they're already scheduled. Like they schedule also. So they're on a project right now. So my framer's like, I can't. Like I'm on a project right now. Probably will be done by the end of the week. So I can get to you on Monday. So like that's okay now. So yeah, we're ahead of schedule, kind of, but not really. We're just going to have 2 down days of nothing to do. So that's an example. I know we talked about schedules a long time ago on another podcast, but episode. But see, you can't always. It's not that easy. You can't just pull people forward.
It is not easy.
It's much easier to push them than it is to pull. In my opinion, in my experience, it's that way.
It is because then they can bring that pleasant. If they have a small project lined up after that or whatever it might be, then they can make that pleasant phone call to that client and say, hey, you know what? We can get there 2 days early. Our schedule freed up, or a week early, or whatever it is, and then just flip flopping those projects or whatever it might be. But yeah, I've had that conversation before with a client and just said, nothing's been done for 2 days. It's because I had plumbing and electrical rough-ins. I had a week for that, and they were both done by Wednesday. She's like, so nothing gets done Thursday and Friday? I was like, yeah, you should be happy about this.
Right. That means everything went well, nothing broke.
Well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything's gone as planned and even better than planned. So you should be happy. So you have 2 days of no noise, no one waking you up at 7:45, 8 a.m. in the morning. But I can't just, to your point, I can't just bump up inspectors and drywall guys and carpenters. And I can't just bump everybody up. They're not sitting at home waiting for me to waiting for my phone call.
Exactly.
At least I hope not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, here we go again. Another week of this remodeling, the renovation situation podcast, where we pull back this layers of these complex remodeling industries. So grab your beverage choice and listen on. Here we go. I'm Joe. Yep. That is Todd on the other side of the screen. And what are we talking about today?
Well, I think we kind of were inching towards that, but I think the topic was indecisive clients, or maybe just dealing with that indecisiveness. Do you have a
indecisive clients,
checklist or methodology to how to get people to make decisions? I think all too common these days, and this actually came as a request from a design build company out of Minnesota, that
we have a follower. We have a follower.
At least one follower. There's at least one.
So we got a request. We got a request from you guys asking us to touch base on this topic.
Dealing with.
And if I remember correctly, he was touching base on selections also, and the difficultness of getting the client to make selections, and how do you deal with that?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So there's no real answer. So let's just put it out there. There's no like quick and easy, this is how you do it. Everybody does it a little bit different. And in the end, you're dealing with the psychology of humans. So good luck. All right. So there you go. There's your answer. So cheers.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck. Yeah. There's some different approaches to this, I think, for sure. And everyone kind of has their own methodology to it. I think, like I said, it more often than not, you just get that analysis paralysis, and it's become much more rampant lately. People are overwhelmed with decisions to make, and they are just inundated with looking on Instagram, looking on Facebook, looking on House, looking on this, looking on there's so many different things. Then they're in a showroom somewhere, and then they're at the neighbor's house, and whatever it might be, that they struggle with making those important decisions. And they're important because to us, and we've talked about this, is like sometimes scheduling can be the most difficult thing to do. So if you're not making those decisions in a timely manner and you're delaying your project, now you're causing us to delay someone else's project potentially because you're not making up your mind and you're causing delays. Now that leads to delays across the board, right? It's kind of a snowball effect. So some people I know like to fine a client. Say if the decisions aren't made by this point, like we will actually fine you for it. I don't do that. I'm too casual, I think, to do that.
I wonder how that would work. Yeah.
Yeah. But I know some people that'll do it. Yeah. And it's for that reason. If you're not making those decisions, you're delaying your project. And in turn, you're delaying our business from operating efficiently. And you're affecting the next project coming after you, potentially. Maybe not always, but potentially. So,
yeah.
Anyway,
I'm curious, would it be best to, there's a lot to talk about on this topic, and I think we can get in the weeds pretty quickly. I'm wondering if it has a lot to do with your general setup of your process. Because everyone's process is slightly different, but I would imagine there's only a handful of ways of doing it. Would it be easier? Why don't you tell, I have a question for you generally. What is your process from, don't go through the whole production side of things, but just like when you get a client on the phone and then they sign with you to move forward, where in your process does the client make the tile selections, the paint selection, the plumbing selection? When do they make those selections in your process? So that's question one. And then question two, how do you keep them moving along your process? So on a timely manner, and how does them not making a selection or delaying the selection of a particular item hinder you? And how do you deal with that? I guess answer those questions, and then I'll be happy to,
sure,
answer my own questions there as well. Because I think it's going to be different for every. I think the answer of how to deal with it is going to be slightly different on everybody's process, depending on the process of each company. Right. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. Probably not. Who knows?
So depending on what the project is, I mean, for the most part, we're talking about remodeling all the time here, right? So whether it's a kitchen or a bathroom or even a basement for that matter, whatever it might be, typically you want all those decisions made up front if possible. So you want your cabinet selection made, you want your tile selections or your flooring selections made, you want your fixtures, and then especially all those things that are going to have lead times. And I always tell people, hypothetically, say we're doing a kitchen remodel, full gut job. I don't even consider starting until I know cabinets are here. Cabinets have arrived. So that's usually going to dictate my schedule, and that's usually the longest lead time. So when that's happening and we're waiting for cabinets, take a cabinet sample, take a door sample, a drawer sample, whatever it is that you got from the showroom, and take that around to look at countertops, look at backsplash tile, look at all those things. And while you're waiting for those cabinets, you're kind of piecing all those other things together. I'm not the biggest stickler for having this needs to be done by this date, this needs to be done by this date, this by this date. Just because I don't like to be pushy. Like I want to do this right. I want you to not feel rushed. There's enough stress financially. There's enough stress on this being upset with your house being torn up. I don't want to add pressure to that and make you feel forced to make a decision when you're still just uncertain. Most of the time, a good designer will help facilitate that. I'll always give my 2 cents, but I always say I'm not a designer. So if you want my opinion, I'm happy to give it. But I don't try to make anyone make decisions that they're not ready to make. Having said that, there's kind of the tail end of that, and we've run into this a couple times lately, the things that I usually pay no attention to, such as paint color or grout color things of that nature that I can go buy off the shelf. So usually that will always just sample there. I have all my grout samples. I have paint samples. We'll put them on the wall. There's also a company called Material Bank. I don't know if you're familiar, but you can sign up with them. And it's a free service for designers and contractors that will paint color, for example. They'll send you an 11 sheet of that paint color. So you're not going and buying a sample jar for $8 and then just what do you do with the rest of this sample paint, right? So it's a very nice system. They'll ship it to you and within a couple of days, tape it to the wall for the client, take it down, and you send it right back to them when you're done with it. Something like that, though, has held us up repeatedly lately. I literally had eight paint colors on a wall in a bathroom, and they were looking at it for over a week. And I'm thinking, like, my God, like it's a paint color, just pick a paint color. I may be straying a little bit farther along than I needed to here. So feel free to cut me off at any time. I'm rambling today. But anyway, I think the gist of it is I don't have a cut and dry schedule in terms of you need to make this decision by this point. I want to see a full plan, full design. This is what we're selecting for cabinets. This is what we're looking at for counters. This is what we're looking at for this. And those little things I can kind of fill in along the way.
Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong here at any point in time. So I'm going to kind of summarize what I think you're saying is when a client comes to you, they've already selected their cabinets.
No.
No. Okay. So
before I'm willing to start, those cabinets are
sure. So let's
way.
Go back. How do you help them or force them to make selections? It sounded like everything was based off of your cabinet selection. So is that like the first thing you start with?
Typically if we're doing a kitchen,
like a kitchen, let's just use a kitchen for an example. So
yeah.
All right. So you got a client who called in and they want to work with you. You guys, whatever your pre-selection design agreement, if that, or construction agreement, whatever process you have, they're signed with you. 100% you're moving forward with them. Are you sending them to a cabinet designer?
I'm sending them to showrooms. Yes.
You're sending them to showrooms who have a salesperson, sales rep there that will help them walk through the selection process.
Correct.
And so you're just at home waiting for them to make the selection. And then that sales rep at the plumbing supply house or the cabinet supply house or the cabinet showroom, they're going to put that whole plan together, and then they're going to email you that client's quote or estimate of the cabinet selections that they want. And then you get to go over it and make sure that everything is going to work. All that's good. So You're not actually physically out there pushing them to make the selection. You're just showing them the showroom to go to. Go talk to Bob at the Cabinets R Us. And then they pick it and you get the email back, right?
Yes, right? But I would never send them to Bob at Cabinets R Us. But everything else you said is correct. Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to send them to. I love working with my the small independent people. So I like my independent interior designers. I like my small kitchen and bath shops. I'm going to send them wherever they need to go, to whatever showrooms they need to go to. Talk to an educated salesperson. Talk to someone who's going to help put that whole project together. I'm hands off on that. I don't.
Okay.
On site, I'm happy to help you make decisions, but I don't want to go to a showroom and hold hands, and I don't do that.
Got it. Okay. So on a bigger project, then if they're not necessarily using you for the design part or the selections part, really. On a smaller project like a kitchen, you might be sending them to the supply houses and the showrooms, but you're not necessarily walking them through that. Are you doing any organizing what needs to be selected and what time frame they need to be selected by? Are you organizing that? Or if I'm assuming there's no interior designer, let's just assume your client came to you, you're doing a kitchen remodel, they don't have an interior designer, you're pushing them to showrooms. Who's driving the selections?
Well, at some point, it's going to fall to me if I'm not working with a designer, right? Because if you're again, kitchen, they're going to pick the cabinets. Once they pick the cabinets, to me, next stop is picking your counters out. So I'll send them to a couple different fabricators to go meet with them, see what slabs they have available, look at some different samples, and again, just let them make that decision. If they have questions while you're there, by all means, call me. If you want my opinion on a quartzite versus a granite versus a quartz, call me. Happy to help facilitate those decisions. And at some point, if that's not moving along steadily, and this is, of course, all pre-construction stuff, but if we're about to go gut your kitchen because cabinets are showing up and you don't have a countertop selected, then you're going to hear from me and it's going to be, okay, what questions do you have here? How can we get this moving along? Because you're going to need to secure a slab so it's going to take them some time to fabricate that. And I think some of that, again, I don't have a set schedule for all these things because it's just, we've been doing this so long that to me, it's just in my head. So if I'm working on a project and I know we're starting and they don't have a stone selected for their counters, I'm gonna email them. I'm gonna call them. Hey, we need to get this selection made. Otherwise, you're gonna delay the whole project. And if they delay the whole project, then that gets ugly for everybody because then potentially that's screwing up your entire schedule. If you have employees are sitting at home when they don't want to be sitting at home, and then you get the crossover from other projects because you're going back to that one. It can be an absolute nightmare.
All right. So the minute that they pick out their cabinets, you're picking out a start date. Typically, and while you're waiting, while you're waiting 6, 8, 10 weeks, however long your lead time is for your cabinets, that's the time frame that they have to pick everything else out.
Yeah.
And you're not necessarily pushing them. So it's
new.
It's up to them to know what to pick next, or are you saying, all right, now go pick out your tile, go pick out your plumbing, go pick out this, here's where to go, and then you're just waiting to hear back from all of them?
Right. And I'll give them a list because I'm still gonna have my own just kind of in-house schedule being like fixture schedule, so plumbing fixture schedule, lighting fixture schedule, all that stuff. So I have my own little in-house checklist for that. So I'm going to tell them, you need to look at this, you need to look at that. Go to these showrooms, I'll introduce you to all my salespeople and let me know what you pick and what you like, or if you have questions.
Okay, so, and you don't want to be pushy, so you're not pushing them, but you do have a time limit. Right? You need to know what fixtures are going in before you do rough-in and stuff like that. So how do you make sure that those things are all selected in time? I mean, that's the ultimate question.
Sure.
How are you making sure that happens so you don't end up with all the downtime you just talked about?
I'm not. Yeah. I think there's just that steady little nudge of just upfront of this is what you need to pick. And if they're not picking those things, we're probably not going to start. I mean, depending on what it is, right? So again, if it's if it was a bathroom, I'm not going to gut your bathroom if we don't have shower fixtures picked out. Because like you said, I can't even do a rough-in. And that's the first thing that's going to happen after the thing's demoed. I'm going to have my plumber in there. So we're not even going to start if we don't have that picked. So I guess the more I think this through, it's probably somewhat of a case-by-case basis in terms of just scope of work and what exactly you're doing and how all that's going to get pieced together. Because there's always those little one-off things that I'm happy to start a kitchen before you have a backsplash picked out. I don't care. Or if you didn't have a faucet picked out, okay, we'll get your cabinets in, we'll get your countertops in, and we'll drill out for that faucet later whenever you're, depending what that setup is, if it's a widespread or single handle or soap dispenser, whatever you're putting in there. But so I guess it kind of depends. And I think that ties into everything, right? And this is where this question stemmed from, was like, it upsets the schedule. It's hard on everyone because it creates stresses. So I think it's kind of just dealing with that in a way where I think a lot of companies will fall into that. They'll fall into that way of wanting to keep everybody busy. You're trying to keep your employees moving, trying to keep your projects moving. So they may flat out say, maybe we don't have everything that we want yet, but let's get started because otherwise Joe's sitting at home for 2 weeks. And if he's home for 2 weeks, he's going to go find a job somewhere else, right? So they don't want to lose their employees. They want to keep everything moving as quickly as they can. And that's more the bigger boys that are the, design builds with multiple employees, try to keep things moving, at least in my head.
Okay, I hear you, but there's
Okay.
no answer there, right?
There's not a firm answer.
It's
no.
all a wing and a prayer that
Yeah.
your clients are picking everything by the time you start. And, you're nudging them along, but there's no real schedule timeline. And I know we've done this 100 billion times. So it's all just kind of playing around in our head. And we're just kind of nudging the client along to pick the next thing before you start. Got it.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. I would die of stress and a heart attack if I ran that way. I would not be able to function as a human being.
Why?
Okay,
that scares me
everything.
Too much. Okay, you need everything ahead of time.
So if we want to switch a little bit, my process is very structured, and yes, I will not start your project unless everything is chosen.
Paint color?
Down to everything. What's that?
Paint color?
Yeah,
Grout
we go
color?
through paint color. Yeah, we go through paint color. I won't not start the project because of paint color, but we are in design. We are choosing paint colors.
Okay.
Just because paint colors are tough. Like let's get the option A down on paper. What are you leaning towards? We could pivot to a different paint color after the project starts, but I want you to think about this. And also it's going into renderings and everything too in the end. See, I'm a little different. We're doing a design agreement ahead of time, which is like before the even pre-con, right? So it's very similar to your design build companies out there. I don't really throw myself in the bucket of design build, but it is very, very, very much the same of what is going on here. I want to walk you through and make sure that you've selected everything before we start, very much so. It's just because every little thing kind of bounces off of something else. And if you end up like, for instance, we have these farmhouse sinks that are kind of built like old age farmhouse sinks. So the faucet is coming out of the wall and then out of the farmhouse sink. The farmhouse sink it's got the apron and then the bowl, and then there's a big backsplash, and it's all one big porcelain thing. And the plumbing is coming out of the sink. If you didn't select that sink until after I started, how in the heck would I have been able to do anything? Because framing, right. So it's in all of the other things, and I know you probably wouldn't have started either until
because that's like
that stuff was selected. But I don't even, we don't even like they wouldn't have never even. So all right, let me
any decent cabinet shop is going to ask you what sink you're using, because they're not going to sell you a sink base until they know what sink
was just an example. The point I'm trying to
there's checks and balances.
Say is, all right, we're going through a design. You have a design agreement that is in and of itself. That's like a project, right? At the end of the design, that's when you get your estimate and find out what it's going to cost to build it. Then beyond that is your construction agreement. And that's another project, right? So you have your design, and we're figuring that out. Now in the design, we're building your entire project on paper. So we're getting all these things organized. Now I don't care if you've picked out your cabinet selection. I'm not giving you a start date because I don't even know if you even want to build the thing yet, because we haven't even given you a price. If you haven't picked out your tile, how the hell am I going to give you a price for the construction part? Oh, sure, I could give you an allowance, but that's just me throwing something out in the air and hoping it sticks. Here's $8 a square foot. Go have fun. And then you come back with $40 a square foot marble travertine tiles or something, and it's like, well, that changes everything because now I have different framing and loads to worry about, and that's a whole different animal to install than just a ceramic tile. So who knows what you're choosing, and so I can't give you an accurate construction contract until we find out all of those things that you chose that you choose. Therefore, and because I don't do good with stress and conflict like that, that's crazy. We're going to structure this thing. We're going to build it. We're going to select everything. Then I'm going to get quotes from everybody. We're going to have a walkthrough with everybody. I'm going to get hard numbers for everybody. And then I'm going to build your thing on paper. And then I'm going to give you a price. Once you sign that price, that contract, that's when we start talking about scheduling. So yeah, I don't really have to worry about that too much because I treat the design as its own project and its own timeline, and it isn't dependent on doesn't have a start date. You're not even allowed to talk to me about start date. Like it's after tomorrow sometime, long far away, because we don't know what you've chosen yet. We haven't gotten all that, and we don't even know what this thing's going to cost yet. And I'm not willing to just throw a bunch of random numbers at you and then hope that we hit your budget later. Nope. I'm going to give you a budget at the end of this, and you're going to know exactly what you need to build this thing. And you're going to have a much better experience throughout the whole process doing that. So I guess during the design and answer the more question for me in the design part, we are concentrated on the selections. That's the big thing. First thing is schematics. We're figuring out what walls we're moving. But then after that, now we're into selections. And this is tough. Like to answer the question of how do you deal with clients and getting them to make a decision.
Yeah. So, and this is exactly the way it was put by the requestor.
Okay.
And he did say that the difficulty of steering people towards making decisions and the need for answers at various checkpoints in the project. He said it seems like often on projects, it's like pulling teeth getting decisions from clients. We stress having, quote, 100% of selections made, which is what you're talking about now, before starting the build phase, but that never seems to happen. So again...
so they are starting before they have everything.
Right. And I think part of the issue here is, like I had alluded to before, is it's a different setup. If you're a design build and they have 6 carpenters, you're trying to keep those 6 carpenters working. So if you have an indecisive client who just like, oh, well, we're going to be out of town for 2 weeks, so we're not going to be able to look at paint colors yet. Are you going to delay the whole project because they don't have a paint color? Like you're in a situation where you don't have employees. So you're not trying to move anything along to keep them going. If that takes a little bit longer in the design phase, so be it. And that's, to your credit, that's a great system to have. It's a great way to be. But some other companies who are trying to keep guys going full time, it's like, if you're just patiently, they'll get around to designing when they get around to it. Meanwhile, you have no work for 6 weeks. You don't want to lose your employees. So do you compromise that initial plan of attack that you like to have, that process that you like to have, just to get in there and start doing some work, and then knowing that's going to create a little bit of stress down the road because they're going to be stressed trying to make those decisions in more of a timely manner, but you're keeping your guys busy, I think that's kind of a little more difficult for maybe a company like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's always difficult dealing with clients. I propose this. Why having conversations with your client? Is it what's important to them? So let's get down to, is there a start date that they want to hit? If they are in a position where they're trying to go through selections and they already have a start date in mind that they're trying to hit, which is not how I do it, but let's just assume that's how this requestor is handling things, then I think it's communication. I think it comes back to communicating. If you are communicating that we have a start date of, whatever start date, April 1st, and we want to hit that, then work backwards from that and treat it as a contract, or treat it as a project. Get into your whatever software you have and build out a Gantt chart backwards from April 1st and go, if we want to start by April 1st, we need to have paint selections at this point. We need to have plumbing selections at this point. We need to have tile selections at this point, countertop selections at this point, and blah, blah, blah. Because you could work back with all of those lead times, generalize them all, work backwards, and say, okay, this week, you have to make your plumbing selection by the end of this week or by the end of next week or whatever. You give them plenty of heads up and you work with them. You give them a heads up. If they're working with an interior designer, you have to work with the interior designer and give them that schedule and say, hey, look, interior designer, our clients really want to hit an April 1st start date. Here's what I need from you, X, Y, and Z by X, Y, and Z dates. And why are you not planning that out? If the client can't make that decision by then, let's say you want an April 1st date and it's November of the previous year, right? Because my designs and contracts last for months. There's a lot going on usually. So if that's the case, you can be in November and you work backward and say, I don't have this decision. So we potentially may lose that April 1st date because we're in November and you haven't made a decision on this. And yes, I understand, but that we have plenty of time, but that's what it looks like to you. But we have a lot of other decisions to make along the path. And you can't afford to be focusing on this when you're supposed to be focusing on this 3 months from now, like countertops or whatever. Why can't you just have a conversation with the client or your interior designer and spell it out? And you don't have to share the Gantt chart, but you can share deadlines and say, look, in our experience, we've worked with, in the past, it has seemed like it worked best when we helped our clients with selections by giving them deadlines to make each selection. And usually we start with tile. Let's say we're in a bathroom. We're going to start with your tile. So let's go and get your interior designer involved, and we have 2 weeks for you to pick out your tile selection. So by the end of November, you have tile picked. By the end of December, you have plumbing and countertops picked, and have it that way. And then every week you have a check-in, you call or email, hey, want to know how the selections are going? Or if you're very involved, you are meeting them and helping them with selections, or you're contacting the interior designer and finding out, hey, where are you at on this? And you have check-ins with your homeowner during that time also, and just say, hey, looks like you're making all your selections. I'm getting some of the estimates in. Looks like we're on par. So keep up the good work. Keep on selecting. It looks like our April 1st date's still going to work. But the minute that they don't make a deadline, you let them know that we are no longer going to be able to hit April 1st. I'm sorry, we're now pushed to April 15th.
Right. Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
And to show them that that's how important it is, because there's some clients out there, like you were mentioning with the analysis paralysis, which is generally a lot of my clients. It's tough to get them to commit to a design. Like even after they've made selections, they still are second guessing themselves and they still want to change things on the fly. It's tough, but you have to stick with it. But I don't know. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer here. And I don't think there's one way to do it. And I also think the psychology of each client, you need to ask some questions about what's important to them, what kind of personality do they have, how do you want to communicate with them, and what will push them and what won't push them, right? If it's not a start date that's important to them and they don't care when they start, then having an April start date doesn't mean anything to them. Right?
Yeah.
Because they'll be like, I don't care. Okay, April 15th. Shit, let's just push it to May. So you can't use that as like the I don't know. You can't use that as the motivator. So you got to find out what's important to them and what's going to work for you. And then also, if the start date's important to you because you have employees and you want to keep them busy, well, then you have to communicate with them and say, hey, look, we have another project coming up that's scheduled after yours. And if we can't hit this April 1st start date, I'm afraid that we might not have time to devote the attention that your project needs to get it done in time for the next project that we have lined up.
Right. Because they've already made all their decisions and they're after you.
Right.
Whether that's true or not, it's irrelevant. But
yeah.
And it's an excellent motivator.
And you just have to explain that maybe it's important to us that we start by April 1st. And I need your help in order to do that. And here's what we need from you. I almost guarantee that most of these design build firms, and probably this one, is not communicating enough with their homeowner about the needs that they're needing from their client. They're probably just saying, hey, I need your tile selection. Get it to me ASAP. Oh, great. Yeah. But maybe a little bit more context will help.
Well, right.
And just being a decent human being with communication and keeping up with it.
Right. And that's interesting too, because he's like he had mentioned that they strive for that 100% selections made before they start. But as he said, that never seems to happen. So why isn't that happening? Who's letting that go? Well, is it the project manager? Is it the owner? Is it who's just saying, oh, well, we'll kick that can down the road and deal with it later. Let's just get started. You know what I mean? Like if that's your
very
process,
good question.
Why are you constantly straying from that process? So it's you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot a little bit, you know?
Right.
Just on a smaller scale of things, and I don't need to get too much into this, but I mean, me, I still like my smaller one-off projects, just because we're, heavily carpentry focused. So for instance, we were doing a full bathroom remodel not too recently, and they wanted to do a powder room while we were there. And it was literally just a new vanity and doing some wainscoting with like panel molds, just rectangular panel molds and a new baseboard.
Okay.
I dropped off my box of samples that has 6 different profiles of panel molds in there. Okay. And I said, we're here. We're already going to be set up doing finished work in the bathroom. We're already remodeling. Yeah. So I gave them a fair price to do the powder room. So we put in the new vanity, which they already had. It was sitting in their living room for a year, which is odd in and of itself. But we put that in, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I gave you a full box of all these different samples of a chair rail, of panel mold, of baseboard, whatever. And these are all stock profiles from my from the company millwork company I order all this stuff from. And they sat on it for 2 weeks. Like literally we're on a moving blanket on their floor. So in a small scenario like that, like I never in a million years would have thought it would have taken somebody that long to pick a panel mold. They're all very similar looking. They're very similar looking. You're looking a little bit wider, a little bit more of a rounded profile, what have you. In the past, when I've done this, I'll drop them off to a client. They'll look at me and be like, either like, I don't care, or this one looks fine, or which ones do you like, something to that effect. But usually that decision is usually made in a day or two. It's not like a drawn out process. But these people, it took 2 weeks. And now because of that, we were already doing all the finished carpentry work on the other bathroom. Well, now that's done. So now I pulled off this project. I'm somewhere else. And then you're telling me 2 weeks later that you found what you wanted. It wasn't even from the samples that I got. You found what you wanted. So now when can we do this? So, which is fine. And we were pulled off and can just go back whenever it's convenient for our schedule. But still, it's just that kind of the idea of I didn't want to have to pull all my tools off there and then come back 3 weeks later. So I think part of that question too was just how do you get people or help them make decisions, And I found a lot of people just require validation. They are so overwhelmed by all these choices. And if they do pick something,
designers are for.
right? They just want to know that they're not making a mistake.
Yeah.
Because all this stuff isn't cheap. It adds up. You're spending a lot of money potentially in a lot of these projects. So they just want that validation of just, yeah, that's a great choice. You're going to love that. Right.
All right. I got some questions. I don't want to get too far away from your little example here.
Okay.
You knew that you were going to be pulling off of this thing in 2 weeks. You knew you were going to be off the job site in 2 weeks. You knew that. Did you give her a price ahead of time
For the powder room?
for the paneling and all that? Yeah. Right.
Uh-huh.
So did you ever, after the initial dropping off the samples, did you ever reach back out and communicate with her about the paneling? And what was her response?
Well, originally they said, oh, we haven't had time to look at them. We will. So I said, okay, fair enough. And then they got back to me again and said, we were looking for something that was a little more square edged. Do you have any more samples? And I was like, no, I don't. But I said, why don't you go into my mill workshop? They'll make you whatever you want. They have a whole library there of everything under the sun. So if you want to go talk to them, I'll introduce you to the sales guy. They said, oh, okay, great. They never went in there. Instead, they went to Menards twice for some reason.
Twice. Okay, so the first time when they said, well, we haven't really had time to get through it, get to it because our Netflix time is really important to us. Did you respond with, okay, no problem, and I'm assuming it's already been a week. So now you only have one more week left on this job site. Did you mention, hey, I realize that you haven't had time to look at it. Thanks for the update on that. Just so you know, I just want to be open and clear that we're pulling off of your job site in a week. If we don't have this selection in the next day or two, we will not be able to do your powder room while we're here. And pricing will change and we'll have to come back at a different later date when the schedule allows us because we have another project after this. Did you mention any of that at week one?
I mentioned all of that except for the price changing.
Okay. Well, good. Kudos for you. Okay, great. And what was her response? Okay.
I think she threw her husband under the bus to some effect.
Well, husband's fault.
He was busy and he hasn't had time to look at it or whatever it was. Something to that effect. Yeah.
The point I was just trying to make was that communicating, and it sounded like you did, is communicating with the homeowners about why you need them to make that decision and how can I help, right? Is there anything that I can help you with? And if it's just no, husband hasn't been able to have time to look at it. Okay, just want to let you know, here's the result.
Right.
Just be open. And I find just being honest and open and letting them know why you need the things that you need to help. You're helping them, help me help you situation, right?
Sure.
So kudos to you. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. I personally probably would have said that the price will change just because we're already here and we already have tools here and we're already here for another project. So we can just jump on this. But, we have something scheduled afterwards. So if we're going to come back at a later date, this is a whole different project at that point, and we'll probably have some price increases by then.
Yeah. And that's what I was getting at, right? And there's, again, my example was just a small one-off example. I didn't really lose too much sleep over not being able to put panel molding in a powder room. I didn't really care.
But it's a great example.
But it was, example being is just like you said, what are you going to do? What are you going to institute to have those people make those decisions? So whether it's going to be more cost effective for you to do this right now, it's one less time you're being exposed to dust and debris and, drop cloths in your freaking house and all that stuff. Or us using your garage, because at the time it was still cold out. So you're parking a car in the driveway and out in the freezing cold instead of in your warm garage. There's a whole number of things, but everything you just said, you let them know this is, if you're not going to make a decision, fine. These are the consequences.
And in the end, you don't really care in this example. You're not trying to force them. You just want to make sure, because you are the professional. They probably haven't thought about all those things. You do this for a living. So you have all these things and you know how invasive things this all can get and how difficult it can be for them and you. So why don't you just share it and see what they say? Let them make the decision. At least you told them about it. So when it comes up, they already know. Well, crap, we didn't make a decision. That's on us. My bad. So now it's going to be more. We understand it. It's going to be later. We understand that too. You told us about it right up front. So that's on us. But, to be honest, Netflix was way more important to us at the time. Seems silly now that we have to pay an extra couple $1,000s and we have to wait 3 more months. But, I really needed to see that next episode because, and that's okay. That's okay. Great. But it's not on me. They got to make the decision. They are in the control. But I got to share my expertise for them and let them know why and how and be done with it. Like, I don't know. I feel as though if you are a little bit more honest and transparent, and I don't mean that you need to show them your books, but if you just be transparent about what you need, when you need it, how, why, I just think they're going to want to help. They're going to want to make that decision to help you, help them. Yeah, and in the end, it's going to work out better. Not every client this is going to work with. Like, there's very difficult clients out there that you can lead them to water, but you can't force them to drink, and that's on them. You just do your best. But when you got a timeline that you're trying to hit, and you need them to make selections, I hope you're communicating that with them, and then hold them accountable. I'm accountable. Really sorry, but we're going to have to push the start date. And I'm a stickler. I do not start until everything's chosen. And matter of fact, everything is at least ordered. Majority of the time, I have everything on site by the time we start. I mean, right now we're in demo and I have everything on site except for the cabinets.
Nice.
Tiles in. Vanity is sitting there. All the plumbing fixtures are there. Everything. So we try. And that means your design and pre-construction is going to be longer. I ask you this.
Whoa. Guys,
if your projects, if your design pre-construction process, if you're constantly not making your 100% of selections before you start, then maybe you're not estimating that pre-con and that selection part accurately. Maybe you're not giving the clients enough time. If you're 100% not making it, then there's a flaw in your process. So either you're overestimating the amount of time that the clients, or underestimating the amount of time that the clients need to select. If you look back, and why don't you keep track of this and look back at your projects and go, well, if we just gave them another month, maybe we would have had everything. And so why don't you just start doing that? Just give them the extra month. Now,
fair point.
In the beginning, your business is going to be slow because you're going to have this window of you're now adding more time in the pre-con or the design, however your process works. You're going to have more time devoted to that part, which means you're not going to start the next projects as fast, getting off of the ones that you're on now, which means that your guys are going to be slow for the short term. But in a year, after you start getting through that and you've now increased, now you're more accurate on your timeline during design or pre-con, you're allowing the selections to be happening during that window. You've implemented communicating with the client, giving them deadlines and showing them whatever they need by the time that they need it. And that starts to work. Now you have more for your pre-con or design. You are ending up with 100% selections or very close to it before you start. You don't have any lag during production. And now now it works because then you can start. Now you are more accurate with your production right? Because now you're going to be more accurate with your end dates. So then you could be more accurate with your start dates on the next project. So yes, in the beginning, it's going to be slow because you're working out your flaws and you're fixing the process. But I would argue in the end, long term, you won't have that lag time anymore, and you'll be able to stack your jobs appropriately with more accuracy.
And you're ultimately going to lead to a happier client and happier employees.
100%. And you're going to be more efficient and make more money.
Yeah.
Now, if you gotta tell your guys that we're implementing this new process, it's not really new. We're realizing that
adjusting the process.
We realize that we're not necessarily getting these selections completed, and they're causing X, Y, and Z in the production, and we're being inefficient in production, which is costing us money, time, and effort. If we can nail it down in design, I think that'll make production a little bit better. So we're going to implement these changes in design, which will be a trickle down effect and make production work a little bit better. So while we're implementing this, we may have a couple pockets in between jobs right now, getting through the jobs that are still having those problems. And until we can get through those, we might have a little slow time because we're adding the new process on the new ones. But in the long run, we're going to be way more efficient, more effective, all the things. And we won't have these downtimes. And I'm sure the guys in production would love it because production hates design and design hates production. So if you can get them to talk better and have everything in line, then I think that's going to all work out better anyway. In the end, I just think it's communicating with your client.
Communication, key. Yep. That's what we always say.
What do you think, boss?
Communication is key. I like it.
Good?
Yeah.
All right. I don't think we answered anybody's question, but I hope it gives you something to think about.
But we rambled on for an hour.
We sure did. All right. Cheers, guys.